Hi, my name is Zalman Ainsworth. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of APTV. Today I'm with David Makin from Axil Coffee. Axil will have 22 retail venues with 3 more still to be delivered this year, all across Victoria. Dave runs a very big wholesale business, retail business, 220 staff, a very prominent location throughout the Melbourne CBD, and has some really good lessons of how he got to this success and the lessons and the pain he lived through to get here. Some really good insights to how coffee businesses work, what their margins, profits, and economics look like inside a cafe. I hope you enjoyed this interview. Thank you. Dave, what would you say the top 3 things are that make a cafe successful versus not successful?
I mean, for me, my 3 things, I always do a really detailed business plan before I open any of my stores. So P&Ls, cash flow projections, I spend a lot of time on that. The second thing is obviously quality food and beverage, but more than that, it's actually the consistency of the product that you put out every day. And the third thing for me, and the most important, is actually the team that's in the store. We've rolled out and offered our staff to buy into stores. So I've got 17 staff now that own equity positions in Axil stores, and that's different to profit share. Profit share is smoke and mirrors. There's a few operators that do that, but I mean, you can make a store make money or lose money on a P&L simply by how you gear it. So for us, they get equity shares, and so that way they really benefit from the ownership.
So business plan, product, and staff, and loyal staff that actually have skin in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I've got staff here, and the owner of this store, Ricky, she started with us as a waitress, then a supervisor, and then a manager, and now an owner of 2 stores with us.
How many years was that journey?
It was like probably a 4-year journey.
Wow. Good on you. That's great.
Yeah.
So you got 22 stores.
Yeah.
Of those 22 stores, how many of them are in the CBD?
14.
14. How many of them are in office buildings?
All 14.
All 14,
yeah.
Okay. And you've signed 3 new leases in 2020 to open later this year.
Yeah, correct.
Right.
So since COVID hit, I've signed 3 more leases during this time. Okay. My senior management team wonders what I'm doing sometimes. But personally, there's some great opportunities. We're getting deals signed now with landlords where the commercials, I never would have been offered these commercials in 2019. And my personal feeling is that once we get past COVID, landlords are going to revert straight back to the deals they did in 2019. So I'm doing some great deals now. I've done my cash flow projections, so I know I can sit on them. I can sustain the losses for now. And then when we come out the other side, I can capitalize on them.
So you're just taking advantage of the current market conditions, knowing that the recovery is around the corner?
Yeah, I mean, if we look even interstate to Sydney and Brisbane, and then you look internationally, we're going to recover from this. Is it going to be in a month or is it going to be in 6? I can't answer that, obviously, but personally, I believe that we are going to recover. It's a matter of time. I'm an optimist. I hope I'm right. But I think that I'm going to be in a great position to capitalize when we get there.
If you could just go back to cash flow, can you just talk us through what a successful cash flow and business model looks like for a cafe?
I mean, in regards to cash flow, when I look at a P&L for any of our stores, I'm looking to bundle the food costs and the labour costs together, and I'm looking for 65% for those 2. And so that'll differ between food and labour depending on the size of the store, but overall, if that's 65%, I'm pretty happy. And then rent sits at 10% of revenue, expenses at 5%, and then I'm looking for a 20% profit on the bottom line.
So just using a round number, $100,000 turnover, 65 grand go to your staff and products.
Yeah.
10% goes to your rent.
Yeah.
5% goes to
electricity, gas, some on costs.
And then 20 grand goes into your bottom line profit.
Yeah, that's the aim.
And anything short of that, you're eating into your profit, which makes it unsuccessful.
Yeah, I mean, there is some movement on that. Like obviously, when we go to some sites like the airport, I run a slimmer bottom line, but the numbers are a lot bigger than $100,000. Right. So then it still makes sense because you can't bank percentages. You can only bank money. So,
yeah, it's interesting to understand how that model works and what the rent looks like at the end of it. Yeah. And really helps owners and agents like myself understand your business before presenting opportunities.
Yeah, definitely.
Melbourne has a very, very healthy and popular coffee culture. It's been going on for many, many years now. Where is it heading in the next 3 to 5 years?
I mean, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? I mean, if we knew where it was heading, we'd jump on that. I mean, COVID's definitely seen a lot more in-house coffee making, like at home, and we've definitely seen online sales dramatically increase based on that. But will that settle when we come out of COVID and people return, to their offices and to the city and things like that? Will we see that in-home market drop off a little bit? Perhaps, but it's here to stay now. So that's been a big market.
And coffee shop fit outs and designs. I mean, we're now in your newest store at the Collins Arch at the foot of the W Hotel. This is a pretty cool design, different to everything else I've seen. Is this where we're heading to?
No, they're all uniquely different. And actually these days, especially with contributions from landlords, the landlords have more and more input into how they want the store to look. So this Collins Arch store particularly, there's a lot of high profile law firms and accounting firms in this building. And so the landlord gave us a lot of direction and input in how they wanted the store to look. And so that's how they end up uniquely different.
Now, are you diversifying your business away from coffee into other products and services?
Yeah, I mean, we've signed a couple of new things that we're working on at the moment. We're at a concept and branding stage. We've signed some leases. So we've got a couple of new things coming out, still in the food hospitality space, but not coffee.
And it's still in the cafe menu concept?
No, we're going to step very outside of the cafe concept and do some other things in food.
Cool, that's exciting. Yeah. And do any of your cafes sell alcohol?
We've got a couple that are licensed.
Does that work?
Not particularly, to be honest. We have visions of grandeur that we're going to sell a lot of alcohol, but to be honest, most of them do, a handful of drinks every week. It's particularly handy if you want to do a function. So if we want to do a cocktail party or an after hours, and that's the one thing we should utilize more of, is we've got these beautiful venues, and for 365 nights of the year, they sit here empty. So it's probably something we need to work on and do a few more events and functions.
Have you ever tried trading a cafe into the night and doing a bit of a dinner menu?
I think there's only a handful of venues in Melbourne that can successfully do breakfast, lunch and dinner. Because a lot of the time when you go for dinner, it feels like you're sitting in a cafe. And some of the time, if you go to a nighttime venue and have breakfast, it kind of feels like you're sitting in a nightclub, The floor's a bit sticky, you can smell alcohol. So, yeah, there are a few venues that have managed to do it really well in Melbourne, but they're few and far between.
Staffing seems to be the biggest issue in the hospitality industry in Australia at the moment. How many staff in the Axil organization?
Yeah, so we have 220 staff now.
How are you going to finding new staff and keeping the ones you have?
It's like really difficult at the moment. I've never seen it like this. Been in hospitality in Melbourne a long time, and the staffing situation is like a major issue. We've really just made it something for everyone to work on. So we've spoken to all 220 staff and talked about the fact that you should be talking to your friends, talking to family, talking to customers when they're in. And if anybody's hospo or anybody's interested in being hospo, then you should be getting their contact details, and we should be pushing them into our business to bulk up the team.
And has that worked? Are you getting a lot of staff coming through those channels?
Oh yeah, you'd be surprised when you ask a staff member and they're in a share house with 3 other people, and then you go, are any of the people that you live with interested in the job? Oh yeah, I've never asked, I suppose. And then all of a sudden, we pick up one staff member and that. So yeah, well, I mean, we've got one share house and 3 of the 4 people in it work for Axil.
Wow.
So I mean, that's kind of worked. But yeah, it's just a constant push to find. So we used to just place ads when we needed staff. Now we have ads constantly placed on 4 different platforms, and every week we're interviewing and trialing, and we're adding people every single week to the team.
Now, customer expectation, you've been in this business for how long?
27 years hospo.
Where do you think customer expectation is today compared to where it was 10 years ago?
I mean, that's part of the problem. I don't think it's moved a lot. And part of the problem with that is the pricing really needs to move. The price of a cup of coffee, we've talked about it a long time now, it hasn't really moved a lot over the 10 years that I've owned Axil. And it really needs to, but the customer needs to understand the difference between why is a coffee at 7-Eleven $1 and why is it $4 at Axil. And there needs to be more of a spread and more of an understanding of why you pay that. So hopefully that happens as we keep moving through.
And in your opinion, why would you pay the $1 in 7-Eleven versus $4 in Axil? What's the value proposition for that $3 difference?
It's like anything in life. I always relate it to cars. I'm a bit of a car guy, but I mean, you can buy a Hyundai. You know what you're getting. You can buy a Mercedes. And some people one day, not me, but you can buy a Ferrari. You know what I mean? Like there's value propositions in those. The quality is very different, and you can see the quality in those cars. Unfortunately, in a cup of coffee, it's harder to see that value and that quality. But there's coffee producers in third world countries behind each of those cups of coffee that are relying on specialty operators like myself to buy coffee at the right prices and make it sustainable for everybody along the coffee chain. And at $1 a cup of coffee, I can assure you that's not happening.
If you're comparing coffee to cars, which car would you compare Axil Coffee to?
Cool, that wasn't in the list of questions, Zelman. I mean, I'd say we sit in that, I'd like to think that we sit in that sort of Mercedes, BMW, Audi bracket. You know what I mean? Where we're not like ridiculously unattainable. You know, we're a daily driver, but we're thoughtful and considerate about what we do and how we do it. And we deliver a quality product on a consistent basis.
22 stores, 220 staff. You're in some of the biggest, best buildings in town. You're in the airport. Great success story. But was it always so successful and fun?
No, not at all. It's, you know, I mean, I did a degree in hotel management straight out of school here in Melbourne. And yeah, I had a cafe, did all right. You know, I thought I was the man. I rolled into the city, signed a lease on a big venue with a license, and you know, and yeah, lost a huge amount of money. Was extremely arrogant, too young, and ended up moving back in to my mum and dad's house at, I was 30 years of age, owed just on $500,000 to like suppliers and in debt, yeah. And basically spent the next 6 years like paying off that debt and working to repay all that. And then finally got myself to a position where I was square again, moved back out of mum and dad's house, and then went, and that's when I met my now wife, Zoe, and we opened Axil together.
Wow, what a journey. Yeah. What were the biggest lessons you took out of that 6-year period?
To always take a step back, to always do that business plan, to focus on what if it doesn't work, what if it doesn't go the way you want it to go? Like what's a best case scenario, what's a worst case scenario, when I spend a lot of time working on that now to make sure that I've never got that arrogance and never just roll into the next venue and just presume it'll be as successful as the last one without putting in the due diligence and the time.
And what advice would you give to anyone wanting to start in the hospitality business now?
I mean, it depends. If you're talking about someone that's worked in hospitality, then give it a go. I've had some friends, you know, one in particular stands out that was a travel agent at Flight Centre, and he talked to me about wanting to open a hospitality business. And my advice to him was to go and keep his full-time job, go and get a job on Saturday every week for 3 months at a hospo venue, work that Saturday every week for 3 months, and then at the end of 3 months, come back to me, and if you still want to do it, I'll give you a hand and help you out, no problem at all. And the response to that was, I don't want to have to work a 6th day and work in hospo for someone else. I want to own my own. I'm like, if you can't commit to 1 day a week for 3 months, you should not be going into hospitality.
It's a lifestyle, isn't it? It's not so much a job. Either you love it or you don't.
Yeah, you got to live and breathe it like all day, every day.